when you're here at BentOnBetter, we want you to fail in the gym. Mm-hmm. We want you to fail with your lifts safely.
And not just for the sake of failing.
No, but we want you to work to the place where your body is just like, I'm unable to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And then it fails.
Yeah.
But that's a good thing when it's in a controlled environment like here, when it's encouraged here, when it's supported here, and when it's safe. Mm-hmm. And that's how we're going to allow for our bodies to push the failure, to be able to push it out. So that way it's eventually going to be so far out because you work so hard here. Instead of just going through the motions, you show up consistently. You put in the effort. You work to failure, right? Not every single time.
Yeah, you're not battering our bodies to a pulp every time.
We're not trying to do it every single time, but we do, however, want to
Yeah.
prioritize it. When we feel really good, we can push it, the envelope a little more. But the whole purpose is when we keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, and it eventually gets so far out that it takes so much more energy to get to that spot that it's going to be so rare to get there. So we push it all the way out there, so that way your body is well equipped to handle the stresses and the strains of everyday life. Hey, welcome back to the BentOnBetter podcast.
Hello.
A little hesitation there because I almost said the other one. The other one, if you didn't know, the other podcast that we have is the Better Fitness Proof podcast, where I host that one, but we talk to our members about what they've gone through and what has gotten to them to where they are now. So if you haven't already checked it out and you're not subscribed there, make sure you go to YouTube and search Better Fitness Proof Podcast, or in any podcast platform where you find this one or listen to this one, wherever you are, YouTube, social, or anywhere.
Yeah,
honestly.
we also have a podcast where we review fart sounds, and we rank them in order of how much we think it'll stink.
The Better Fart Podcast.
The better.
That's it. Ridiculous. So Nick, how was your weekend?
It was great, man. It was great. I don't want to do podcast or anything like that. Let's just say I celebrated a great life event.
Yeah.
And
celebrate your birthday.
Yeah, I celebrated my birthday.
Yeah.
Celebrated my birthday and got to celebrate with friends. Got to celebrate with you were there. You were there, right? I wasn't. Right? I remember it.
Yeah, I was thinking. Yeah, I was there.
No, you were there. Our other brother was there.
Mm-hmm.
So I had both of my brothers, plenty of friends, and plenty of sushi.
Yeah.
Plenty of fun food and drinks, and we were merry, man.
And I think it's funny. I said this to you. The food selection. It was a really interesting party food selection. So
it was not based around the food selection.
So the drinks were 3 different types of whiskey.
Three different types of whiskey.
There was an Irish whiskey. There was a Japanese whiskey.
Yeah. And
there was, I forget where the third.
I don't know what the heck it was. Yeah.
I just want to say probably an American made.
Sure, whatever.
Whiskey of some sort. But for the first time, I tried all 3 and found that I was really into that Irish whiskey.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah.
And I'm not a huge drinker, but let me just pull it up here.
I took
a picture of it. That's how good it was. I took a picture so I would remember how good it was, so that way if I go out and order it again, oh man, I'm gonna butcher it. How do you say that?
Oh my gosh, dude, I don't know. Don't worry about it.
Napagi Castle.
I think it's Napog Castle.
Napog Castle. Well, anyway, it's a single malt Irish whiskey, 12-year-old. And
all right, what are we doing? We endorsing these guys? What's going on?
Well, no, I mean, I'm putting it out there in case they decide that you want to sponsor the podcast. They'd be like, well, we'll sponsor it if you say our name right. So there we go. So to the single malt
putting my
Irish
money
whiskey
on
out there.
Napog.
It was good. But the other fun part was that it was not only 3 types of whiskey, but it was all plant-based sushi.
Yeah.
So plant-based sushi and tater tots.
And tater tots, man.
They're tater tots. So plant-based sushi, tater tots, 3 types of whiskey, and water. Lots of water.
Were you there for the cake?
Oh yeah, the cake.
Did you try the cake?
No, I didn't try
the cake. The cake was so good.
No, it looked good. You can't go wrong with Oreos.
Oreo, man.
Oreo anything is fantastic. I just didn't partake in it because I didn't want to have the bubble guts later. So
right, I forgot it had
the gluten will get me. The gluten will get me sometimes. That's okay. I could have totally had some, but I just chose not to, and that's fine. Neither here nor there. But you had a good weekend.
Had a great weekend, man.
Had a great weekend.
Yeah.
I had a great weekend too because I was there celebrating your birthday. Got to see all of our friends who we haven't seen. Some of them I haven't seen in years. Some of them who used to be members here were part of like the foundational crew here, which is pretty cool. We saw a handful of them. I mean, there were like 6 of them, 6 of the old members there as part of our friend crew.
Yeah.
So it was really cool getting to hang out with everybody and playing some Mario Kart. Like, I'm not a huge video gamer, but that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
You nailed that. Yeah,
was
that's what it is.
bomb.
It's fun.
It was so much
It's
fun.
very fun.
We played that on the Switch, and the boys won't listen to this until after Christmas, but they're getting one of those. They're getting a Nintendo Switch.
So why don't you just tell everybody what you did? Why don't you? Yeah.
So Nick has a Nintendo Switch.
Yes, I do.
And we were all hanging out there, but we decided to break into the boys. We opened up the boys their Christmas gift early, and brought their controllers and played some Switch at your house.
Yeah, you just need to test it out. That's all.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Control.
And so I'm looking forward to giving that to them. We're dating the podcast a little bit now, but they'll get that. And so yeah, it was a good weekend overall. Very fun, but it was also good to relax. But let's shift gears and talk about like what we're going to go through today. So
yeah,
today's podcast topic is
Dun.
drum roll. But it's one that actually a lot of our members have brought up, and they've asked us. It's like, how do we make it so that we have a really good experience with fitness, a really good workout? Like, everyone wants to have a good workout, right? You want to have a good workout so that you can have, and we talk about it, workouts versus training days. But for the simple version of it all, we're going to call it workout, so that way we're addressing that same topic, but we address it as a training day. And we like to have our members think of it that way too. But we're like talking about it. What's a good way? How do we build our workouts? People rave about our workouts. People love what we do. People, I mean, you can look it up on Google. You can look it up on social media. Like,
you follow some of our members, man. They'll post these things.
They post it and they share it, and so a lot of people get to see it without actually being here. But what we're gonna do, we're gonna give it all away today.
Yeah.
We're gonna give it all away and teach you how we do it, what we do, why we do it. And then hopefully be able to provide some value to people who are listening and watching. And just in case they're not in the area, that they're not able to work with us, how we do our things and why the way we do it is better.
Yeah.
And why we take a lot of pride in the way we do it, and the intelligently designed fitness programming is part of our approach to healthy living and healthy journey and creating a healthy, happy human being.
Yeah, well, that right there, like there was the keyword. So when it's really cool to have people feel like they like these workouts. They ask about them. They're like, wait, why did you guys put these exercises together? And so there is actually a method to the madness. And yeah, there's a bit of madness that goes on, but there's a method to it, right? It's systemic, or it's not systemic. It's a systematic approach that we use here. It's very intentional, and that's the point I wanted to highlight. There is there is reason behind it. So when we're talking about producing great results, man, we want to have a routine, something that's familiar. We want to have something that we can practice daily. And it helps when you can create a system out of that, because then when we change things up, there's still some kind of foundational system there, but maybe the exercises that you're doing are a little bit different. So we want to, for those of you who are listening right now, part of what we're going to talk about today and what we're going to discuss is walk you through the typical, when you come in, you're experiencing a few things, you're going through a warm-up, and then it kind of gets a little bit more narrow. You start to specialize your warm-up, you start to get a little bit more focused on some of these certain exercises, and then you get these bigger movements and start to have a little bit more of, let's say, increase your weight and select a couple exercises. And then sometimes you finish your day with a little bit more of like the heart rate, breathing rate, elevated stuff where you feel a little bit more taxed, a little bit more out of breath, or a little bit sweatier. And then you finish up, when you're all done, you finish up with some stretching. And so it's funny, like just going through the line there, I know those were all very broad and general, but there was a method to it, right? Yeah. You could kind of, as a listener, you could hear like, we're warming up, we're getting really excited, we're building up to this peak, and then we start to taper off and we bring it back down. So yeah, we'll dig into it here, man. We start with foam rolling, really, technically, when people come in. Yeah. That would be considered like pre-session work. You're doing some stuff before the training session actually kicks off.
And that's important. I think a lot of people, and I know this because I see it happening still with a lot of members, people aren't prioritizing the foam rolling before everything. And I like to prioritize foam rolling because it prepares, like we talked about in the other episodes, we prepare our bodies to then get ready to prepare to do the work. Mm-hmm. So foam rolling is the pre-preparation step to the preparing of your body to get ready to do what it's going to do.
That was a mouthful.
And it is a mouthful, but it's it's such a great way to look at it, because the foam rolling is not going to be the one answer to everyone's journey. However, in a broad view, it's going to help a lot of people with just getting started.
Yeah, you said it. So you said this mouthful. You said it's preparing you to prepare to get started to train.
Yeah.
And that's it's accurate. I know it sounds funny. The person listening is like, gosh, they're writing it down. They're like, how many betters was that preparing? So it's like, what am I, what? Huh? So what he means by that is the foam rolling is improving your, we've gone through this before. It's improving your blood flow. It's helping with some of the nerve connections that we have. It's helping, I'm trying to keep this a little bit surface level.
This is good.
It's helping with the nerve. Yeah, it's helping with the nerve response that you get from your brain to your muscle, we'll say that. And it's helping you access more range of motion, which is cool.
Can we go through those again?
So we're improving blood flow.
So foam rolling improves blood flow.
And blood flow, as warmer blood comes to these muscles, it raises the tissue temperature, which makes those muscles a little bit more pliable. They can move easier. It also is going to play a little bit with like the nerve connections in these muscles in some ways, it kind of desensitizes them. Not to say that it's going to just take your pain away, but it'll sort of dull some of those triggering responses, like those sharp pains or sometimes those things that jump out to you and then suddenly they're gone throughout your training session. The foam rolling helps kind of like nip that in the bud before it even happens, right? That's kind of a good way to think about it. It's not the answer to pain, but it can be useful when you experience pain or just experience discomfort. So that's that nerve roll there. But if we take a step back to the whole, I was talking about the tissue pliability. If you can move those muscles with greater ease and they're warmer, they stretch easier, like a rubber band that's warm as opposed to a rubber band that's cold, taken straight out of the freezer, then you can access greater ranges of motion in your joints. And if the person listening to this doesn't understand how the muscles play a role in joints, muscles attach bone to bone. And so and across those two bones, there's an intersection. There's a joint, right? So the muscle has to help move those two bones by pulling on the other bone and bending or flexing the joint or extending the joint, right? So that's why that's important. The warm-up that we get to right after foam rolling accomplishes a lot of those same things. It's just on a greater scale. So we're talking about still improving blood flow, improving muscle recruitment, because now as a warm-up, we're doing stuff that's a little bit more active. So we're using those muscles and we're learning how to coordinate those muscles together to produce these bigger movements, right? So like a squat, for instance, to get your butt down into a chair or to stand up from being in a chair, you need to use different, not just one muscle, but different muscle groups. So that's what it's helping do. But we're also talking about, again, like the foam roller did, improving the available range of motion. And the way I like to think about it is, let's say let's just take the squat again, because we can already visualize the squat. Let's say you're squatting, but without a chair behind you. So you're squatting air, essentially. How far down do you think you could squat when you're cold and haven't rolled and haven't really warmed up those muscles, right? Just picture, you don't have to do it, but how far down do you think you could realistically get? And we're not even talking about putting tension in the right areas of your body, right? Not even talking about keeping your posture tall, right? Some of those techniques that we learn when we're training here. But then think about how much easier it feels to go through that same motion once you've rolled, once you've warmed up, once you've actually gotten some of those joints moving, the muscles talking, the brain a little bit more stimulated. So much easier. And it's easier to make tension in some of those muscles, like very intentionally, right? You can think about squeezing your glutes, or you can think about contracting a little bit more, like locking out the quads a little bit tighter when you get to that top position. So it plays so many roles that people might not even think about when they're going through it. We're still talking about the warm-up here, dude.
Yeah, and the thing is, I want to just add a note in here, because I think a lot of people go through the motions, right? So a lot of our members, like we see this all the time, a lot of our members love them to death, but some of them just go through the motions. They show up and they know that the warm-up is part of our routine. So they know that foam rolling's first. So they'll grab a foam roller because they know it's expected.
Yeah.
And then they'll sit on the foam roller.
And use it as a seat.
And use it as a seat
Yeah.
instead of actually foam
as a
roll.
prop.
Or maybe you'll see somebody like just foam roll like the back of their legs and then put it away. And like, well, I already foam rolled.
Yeah.
So it's important, I think, for us to have this discussion, it's important to talk about as a coach, like how can we continue to prioritize the foam rolling aspect so people understand that it's not a one and done, it's a do it until you're ready to move into the warm up. And that's important. It's part of getting ready to do the warm up.
Right.
And especially in the colder months, right? Especially in the colder months where like you're not, your core temperature is, or not your core temperature, the temperature of your extremities maybe a little bit lower because you're trying to keep your core temperature up because everything else in the outside environment is cold, right?
Yeah.
Versus like in the summertime, like you're just naturally sweating if you like just walk from the car to the front door. So warming up in terms of like using the foam roller to get ready to then warm up is a key part. But then you talk about recruitment. So the mental recruitment and the physical recruitment is so important. And that's why what we do is our warm up, and the way we go through it by starting off with what we do. So let's just break it down. We go through, and like this may very well change, and it has evolved because we learn more about everything. We always learn, we always grow, we want to adapt and never get stuck in one way. But for right now, the current working warm up that we use is a rotation through 3 parts of jumping jacks, and we modify those for a lot of our members. Like probably half the people who come in here aren't jumping.
They do step jacks. Less impact
or no impact, but like just an aggressive step to get their heart rate up, right? But you have to coordinate all 4 limbs, legs and arms, moving in the right direction. And what I see a lot of people doing is like this, like really short, like just moving at like the elbows instead of like going through the whole range of like lifting my arms up over my head and coming back down. So we go through jumping jacks or step jacks. We go through a seal jack and then a cross jack. So we go through these 3, and then we move from there into the squat because we've gotten our heart rate elevated a bit, and we're now going to go through that range of motion again. Not understanding quite the tension yet, but just telling your brain like we're getting ready to sit down and stand up without actually taking a seat. And then we go into recruiting the glutes properly. So we sit down and lay down on our backs, and we tell people how to properly line up there. So we're engaging our hips, we're engaging our glutes, and engaging our core, and getting everything activated and ready to produce movement in a loaded situation. So we go through our glute bridges, and then we take them through single leg movements. And then we go through some T-spine mobility, which is crucial, so important for everybody, but especially our members here, because so many people, even if working from home, are sitting in front of a desk or sitting in a position where they're not getting a lot of range of motion through their mid back, through their back as we adjust our seats.
I know, yeah. As you said that, I was like, oh, geez.
Like, wow, I'm really slouching down. These seats aren't helpful for that. But then we take them through after the T-spine stuff. Then we go through just some other things, like go through some push-ups. Like how many muscles do you need to recruit properly to do a real push-up? So much stability.
Yeah.
It's not just an upper body focused thing. It's a full body core stability focused movement. And then we finish with those back burners where we go through some shoulder mobility, some shoulder movements to make sure everything's firing and moving in the right way we want to. So it's very methodical. It's very thought out in the way we progress all the way through the body. And then right after that, we immediately go into our prep reps, which for us is our way of saying so let's break it down. We have
reps, by the way, stands for preparatory, like preparation reps.
Preparation, yes. So preparation
repetitions
for the repetitions we'll be doing with our exercises for the day. So we're gonna kind of make this into a graphic here, an idea of what we're talking about. So we're talking about this upside down pyramid, and we'll call it 4 different parts to the training day. Right?
5, yeah.
So we have the top section, which is the general one. We come in just do the foam rolling. And then we have our actual warm-up. And then we have the 3rd section, which is prep reps, which we're getting into now. And then the 4th section will be the main lifts. And then the 5th section at the bottom is going to be like how it's all narrowed down to one space. It's kind of like, it's still a priority because it's holding it all up, but it's narrowing it down so it's the final part. It's the cool down. It's the finisher. It's the conditioning. It's the stuff that's like, it's important, but it's down toward the bottom of it, like how broad we are and how specific we get. That's the way I like to look at it.
Yeah.
And want to move into what we talk about for the prep reps and how we look at that like bird's eye view of it all.
Yeah. So if you continue to think about that analogy that Matt just gave there, so this upside down pyramid, we're talking in terms of like, narrowing our focus, right? So that's what the shape of the pyramid is kind of used for here, thinking about narrowing our focus in our training. Because if you came in every single day and did the same 3 or 4 movements every day, not just like, the same day every week, but I mean like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, same exact lifting program, then that pyramid might not look as pyramidy. It might look a little bit like less narrow at the bottom, a little bit wider at the top.
Like a bowl.
Yeah, a little bit more bowl shaped. Right. But it still has some kind of narrowing, right? It's some kind of narrowing aspect. We're just talking about changing the movements from day to day. So we get to our prep reps, what we call prep reps, preparatory repetitions for people who are like, why do they keep calling it that?
Yeah, that's good.
That's just something we kind of coined here because it made sense for us. When we're training, we want to start to hone in on the major movements for the day so that when it comes time to loading them and getting them heavier, they don't feel quite as taxing right off the bat. But that you can almost slowly progress up to that weight with a little bit of intent, thinking about your technique more in the reps that are a little bit lighter so that you can slow down the movement, think about your technique, build up those connections to the muscles, and then as you start to load it, you're prepared for it. So we get through our prep reps, and the same goals there during the prep reps as with the warm-up. We're still trying to stimulate all our blood flow, but now we're just talking about communicating to joints that are a little bit more involved in those movements. And it continues to narrow your mental focus, because now you're less worried about the jumping jacks or the other things that we're in our regular warm-up, and you're only focusing on the things that you're getting ready to train for the rest of the day. So we get through our prep reps, and that's a little bit shorter of a time span, and we move into our major movements for the day, or the strength focused portion usually of our training program. And here we're talking about 1 to 2 major lifts. We'll use the squat as another example, and maybe let's say a chest press as another example. So in some programs, we might have them very intimately connected to each other, just based on how we're deciding to progress everybody's training program. Sometimes they aren't back to back like that. Sometimes we might only do one of them, depending on the type of load that we're putting on everybody's bodies for that month or that training program. But with those 1 to 2 major lifts, it's usually accompanied by either an accessory lift after that, so something a little less multi-joint. So a squat is a great example of a multi-joint movement or a compound movement, whereas a bicep curl although can still be a full body exercise, is more of a single joint or maybe 1 or 2 joints depending on what we're working there. So that
also might be called like an accessory lift.
An accessory lift, right? Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. I just want to throw that in there. So if we ever switch up the terminology when we're talking, that might be what we refer to there.
So accessory lift, or it might not be an accessory lift, but it might be more of something like a trunk stability exercise that isn't quite as taxing as the first 2 big major compound movements that we did. So an example of something like that, let's talk about like a Pallof press. Or did I say that correctly?
I mean, Pallof.
Pallof.
I think either one.
A great trunk stability exercise, unilateral trunk stability exercise we're talking about for folks who don't know this one, having a resistance band anchored to, let's say, a wall or to a rack. And you grab that band and you step away from that rack side facing, or that wall side facing. And you're holding that band tight to your chest, and you give it a little push out from your body and a little pull back in. And that band's trying to yank you to wherever it's anchored, right? It's trying to pull you in. So what you're doing is resisting that. You're learning how to root yourself in and turn on some of those muscles that communicate in your trunk to keep you straight and tall and strong and rooted into the floor. So there's just a taking a step down from the squat or taking a step down from the chest press, and still focusing on those trunk stability components, but with an exercise that's a little less taxing. So that's our strength portion. We get through that. We focus a lot of our energy on that. A lot of our sweat goes into that section. And it's quite honestly, when you're done with that, you're going to start to feel a little drained, right? Because we just worked a little bit heavier and a little bit more of those like compound movements. But then we start to get into what we would call more of the conditioning, or maybe a little bit more of the aerobic conditioning focused work, where we might be doing things like slams. We might be slamming some of those slam balls. We might be taking a little cruise on the echo bikes. I know people, I'm trying to use the things I know people are going to go, oh gosh, when they hear it, they're going to go, oh my gosh, the echo bike.
Push the sled.
Yeah, push the sled,
things
pull
that
the
are
sled.
low impact or no impact, especially catering to the people who we work with here. Like we like to do things that are low impact and no impact for a majority of almost 95%, if not 100%, close to 100% of the movements that we do. Aside from the warm-up with the jumping jacks, right? Even those can be modified with step jacks.
Right.
There's no major box jumps. There's no burpees. There's no aggressive swinging from the rafters and jumping and trying to pull yourself up over the bars. Like nothing like that.
Yeah.
That's not what we're doing here. But it's important to add in here in that section, in the conditioning section, in that last piece of the section, is there's also a little more stability usually in there.
Yeah.
Balance work, stability work loaded, and that's how we like to do it. So I'll let you explaining that.
No, that's exactly it. Depending on the day you're here, you might experience a lot more of one type over the other. So we work on stability or your ability to balance, right? So we're talking specifically, let's say, about like the foot or even in the hand, doing something that's single armed. So we're learning how to stabilize some of those joints. We're also working on dynamic stretches, things that are what we would say a little bit more mobility focused, because there are appropriate times to fit these type of exercises into our training routines. And yes, you could argue that being closer to the start of our routine is a good idea. It is. It's a great idea. And that's fine. We can still do them. But having them placed at a time when our bodies are super well warmed up, they've already been through plenty of ranges of motion, and then doing some of these exercises that we know are actually going to start to chip more at the end ranges of motion for people, putting them into positions that are, again, less intense, not quite straining positions, but things that are improving their functional ability to move through wide ranges of motion, just taken at a little bit of a smaller dose at a time when the body is nice and warm. So we strategically place those more toward the end of the workout to help chip away at some of those things. And then after that, we start to cool it down and we'll stretch. So we might have some kind of cool down depending on the season, the time of the year, maybe indoors or outdoors. Sometimes we have a little fun. Sometimes we play some games. We like to have fun here.
Yeah, we like to have fun, but we also like to prioritize like mental health as well.
Right.
And I think it's important to highlight though, when we talk about stability, when we talk about like the range of motion and things we covered in terms of how we structure our program. I know there are some people who don't look forward to some of those parts. Maybe not necessarily, like maybe they like the bikes, right? They like the bikes, or they like the sled. They like that feeling of like, I'm out of breath, I'm sweaty, I feel complete. Mm-hmm. But then they have to go and stand on one leg and just balance on a foam pad with their shoes off. Yeah. Some people are like, well, this is so boring, it's so easy. Like, well, let's take a step back and look and see, like, well, what's happening with your ankle? Like, you're telling me it's easy, but you're wobbling all over the place, and look, you're about to fall over. Yeah. Like, let's slow it down and see, can you hold that position without wobbling? And if you can you hold that for 10 seconds? Can you hold that for 15? How about 25?
Right.
And like, let's scale it up in that way, because too often in terms of, again, like adults, and like this, any adult, right? Even me. Like, I'll use myself as an example. I'm very strong, and there's no question about like my strength. It's a little different now after having run like these 2 half marathons and like prioritizing it. We talked about that previously, how like I've lost 3 pounds of muscle in running 8 months. So over a year's span, I lost 3 pounds of muscle. And we know that because we use the InBody to take full calibration of our composition. So it spit it out, and about a year difference, I lost 3 pounds of muscle. My body fat stayed the same. My weight was almost the same, it was a little different, but my muscle came down. And the reason I bring this up is because my strength has always been that's where I excel. It's strength. And then my mobility was pretty darn good too. I had pretty good mobility. I could move really well through ranges of motion that were important for, like, let's say powerlifting. They were important there on the squat, right, and things like that. But what it took me having to go work with another professional, and I'm going to shout her out now. So I went over to see Ariane. So Dr. Ariane over at the Movement Paradigm. Shout out Movement Paradigm, Dr. Ariane, and Becky, Dr. Becky. We love you guys. You guys are awesome. But over at the Movement Paradigm, I went to work with them not only just to support another small business, but to utilize their services for myself. And so we went through a few different assessments, and she knew my background. She knew I did powerlifting. She knew I was like into lifting. She knew that I'm a coach and a gym owner. She knew all these different things. But we went through these assessments, and she was like, "Okay, look. So you came to me because you had some issues. Like, I had some issues going on with like my upper back, mid back, and getting some headaches, and like movement wise, and so I talked to her and told her my back, told her everything, and said what I was dealing with, and she did the assessments and said, she's like, there's no doubt, like, you're strong. There's no doubt you're strong. There's no doubt you have, like, your mobility is good. Like, yes, you can improve little areas here and there. But she's like, the biggest thing where you are lacking and where you can improve is your stability. And to me, that was like a aha moment. Like, my brain exploded, like a mini explosion in my brain of like stability. And hearing that really helped put it back with the focus on me. Because I do what I do. I live the life I live. I understand all the fitness mechanics and the lifting, all that kind of stuff. I get that. But having someone else tell me where I need to improve and spend effort and time on was a huge game changer. So I've since then recentered, refocused on more stability, and I feel as though I've improved because I've worked on more single leg movements, single arm movements, a lot of core focused movements, not for like abs, but like stability things like bird dog, and dead bugs. But those are great. But really trying to improve my stability while keeping up with my mobility and flexibility. Yeah. To then have to be able to hopefully get back the strength to improve and to see better progress in my strength.
So better foundation.
Setting a better foundation.
You were missing a piece of the foundation. You put it in. You're trying to smooth it out now, and then you'll continue to build.
Continue to build, and that's a big part. And to paint a picture for people, like you can be super strong. So when I was 165 and did this powerlifting competition at 165 pounds, I think I may have been actually 168 was maybe on the weigh-in day. Between 165 and 168, I was able to deadlift 430 pounds, which is more than 2 times my weight.
It's great. It's impressive.
So I was very impressed, and it's a humble brag. But the point is, you can still be very, very strong and lack in stability. So bringing it back to what we're talking about, when we have these workouts programmed, no matter how strong you are, no matter how strong you believe you are, no matter or how strong you know you are, no matter how flexible you are, no matter how good of mobility you have, the stability also comes into the key point in that. And that's why we program it and take so much time in keeping it in our program. Yeah. And so that way, when our bodies have been taxed, so we go through our foam rolling, we go through our warm-up, we go through our preparatory repetitions, and then we go through our major main lift section, then we go through our conditioning section. We go through all these things in this linear fashion to bring you to this end result of, okay, my body has been taxed, I have used everything I have, and now I'm going to focus on stability. I'm going to focus on balance. I'm going to focus on the things that I lack to see how I can improve them, but also so your body has to recruit mentally and physically to improve those areas.
Do you know when athletically or when in physical activity, like anytime you're doing physical activity, you know when the number one time usually is for injury? When you're most tired, right? Yeah. When your body's tired, when your muscles are tired. And so think about it like that. We do a lot of these stability things at the end of our training session because we know that you're perturbed. We know that your body's taxed. We know you're out of breath. We know you're tired, dude. We know you just want to go home. But now's the time to really dig in. You're going to get just as much out of that training as you did when you were doing your heavy squats. Your freaking, 3-rep squat that you just banged out. That was a PR for you. Congratulations. Seriously, good job. Now let's start to focus on the other components here that are a little bit more functional for your everyday life.
Yes.
Let's reduce the occurrence of injury by putting this little thing right here that you can focus on. And even though it maybe not that thing that you want to do at that time, or maybe it is, shoot, maybe you look forward to it. I know I do.
Yeah.
Learning how to use your strength through wide ranges of motion and how to stabilize yourself with one of your greatest influences in the gym, the floor, right? Learning how to...
We do that here. We usually tell people to take their shoes off.
Yeah, that's right? One of the...
So we should tell everybody, like, even whether you're here training with us or not, I would tell anyone, if you can, train in your socks. If you can, train your bare feet.
If you can, train bare feet.
But some other gyms, some of the places don't allow for you to be in bare feet. So maybe if you can get away with being in socks, that's great. Or we can do a whole other episode talk about like shoes. Oh my gosh, there's so many different great options out there. Maybe we should do that. I don't know if next episode.
Talk good about, idea. Yeah.
Do a little shoe review.
I know I get questions all the time. It's funny. I'm like, I don't know who I tell it to most of the time or what. I know everybody knows that we like training shoes, but sometimes I get the question, well, why do you like them so much though?
Well, not training shoes, minimalist shoes.
Minimalist shoes, yeah. So training shoes are general
very
question.
Different.
Yeah.
So minimalist shoes in terms of like there's not a whole lot of support in there. Usually a lot of the ones, like especially the ones I prefer, are the ones that have the wide toe base minimalist shoes. That way I have a better idea of being able to recruit more muscles to my feet, but also have more proprioceptive neurons in my feet, right? Is that the right?
Let's give people, you
awareness.
Have highly specialized sensory receptors in your feet, just as you do in your hands. So think of this, the analogy here. Let's say you put on a mitten, and your job is to, let me just go here. Try to read, no, I don't want to use that example.
You
see where I was going, right? Put your mittens on and tell me you can tell the exact temperature of something. Or like, gosh, dude, I'm struggling here.
Well, let's do the Braille. Let's do the Braille option.
So you were thinking along the same lines.
Put mittens on and see how well you can read Braille.
And whether or not you can proficiently read Braille. But
understanding, like,
tell me if you can distinguish the feeling of those little fine points, right, with your mittens on, and then take them off and do the same thing. Whether or not you know how to read Braille. Yeah, that's fine.
Exactly.
We just wanted to have you find something that's raised, something that you can feel and detect with your fingers. Same idea with your feet. Now, not to say that you need to be reading Braille with your feet, but the point is that you have these sensory receptors there to give feedback to not just your brain, but to your muscles, more importantly, to know what to do. We call these feedback mechanisms. Mm-hmm. And if you can properly stimulate the right or engage the right muscles in your lower leg, upper leg, glutes, so like we're talking hips, trunk, you're going to perform that lift with much more stability, right? So you're going to feel much more balanced. Whereas if you're rocking around searching for those fine points to your toes, or maybe you're not even searching for them, but if you're trying to do it through the very thick pad of, let's say, like a sneaker, a very casual sneaker, it's likely not going to happen. And no matter how strong you are or think you might be, you're robbing yourself of strength and stability there just by keeping your shoes on.
Yep, and so that's why we tell everybody, take your shoes off, and if you're comfortable with it, go barefoot. But I know a lot of people aren't. Even here where we allow barefoot training to be happening, and like in the winter, I get it. Like in the colder months, you don't want to be bare feet, and like I even gave some feedback when we did our training. I was like, like my feet are super cold. I did, and I felt so much better after I took them off. Yeah. And like once you get acquainted with how cold the ground is, like, you feel it better. And then also just say like you can train on turf, and you can put there's a lot of ways around it. However, the important part here is to understand that we're coming from a place of stability, and to work on your stability, you need to remove the factors that are taking away from your stability. Yeah. So you can build those awareness memory sensors in your brain, but also in your body and those in your feet. And you have them in your feet, so why not utilize them? They're there for a reason. Like, let's use them. But when you allow your body to do what it's supposed to be doing, you're going to find that you're going to do those things that you're trying to do better. And it's the same that goes for like doing yard work, right? When we talk about doing yard work, if you are just like grinding, just like doing yard work, you're fatiguing toward the end. And then at the end where you're like pushing through it and try, because you want to get this project done, like that's when the injuries happen. So it's the same thing when you're at the gym and here. So when you're here, it's in a controlled fashion where we want to see you fail. We want to see people fail. And like, I'm going to say this a couple of times. I'm going to say this again. When you're here at BentOnBetter, we want you to fail in the gym. Mm-hmm. We want you to fail with your lifts safely.
And not just for the sake of failing.
No, but we want you to work to the place where your body is just like, I'm unable to do this anymore. Yeah. And then it fails. Yeah. But that's a good thing when it's in a controlled environment like here, when it's encouraged here, when it's supported here, and when it's safe. Mm-hmm. And that's how we're going to allow for our bodies to push the failure, to be able to push it out. So that way it's eventually going to be so far out because you work so hard here. Instead of just going through the motions, you show up consistently, you put in the effort, you work to failure, right? Not every single time.
Yeah, you're not battering our bodies to a pulp every time.
We're not trying to do every single time, but we do, however, want to prioritize it. When we feel really good, we can push the envelope a little more. But the whole purpose is when we keep pushing it, and it eventually gets so far out that it takes so much more energy to get to that spot that it's going to be so rare to get there again. Mm-hmm. And that's why we do the cycles that we do. So back to our training, when we finish this thought. So we push it all the way out there so that way your body is well equipped to handle the stresses and the strains of everyday life. So we push it here in that way so that your body knows that it can push those limits. So when you're doing the yard work and you feel like you're pushing your limits, you know how your body feels when you've pushed it in a place where it's failure. And now you know, like, should I keep pushing to finish this project today? Or do I need to listen to my body, understand how I'm feeling to make sure I finish on another day without injuring myself so I can continue to finish it? But what we do here, which is what I love and that goes along with our programming, is roughly every 3 months, we hit the reset button and we do what we call as PR week, so personal record week or personal best week, PB, but PR is just that's like the gym term, right? PR week. So personal best week for us is when we program these major lifts that we do on a regular basis. Everyone has their own sheets where we look to see what we're looking for your best. Like, what exercise can you do at the highest amount of weight for 3 repetitions? For the most part, it's like 3 repetitions. Some of them, it's like, how many can you do in 10 seconds? How many can you do in 15,
some of them are timed.
But But the purpose of this is to, one, allow your body to push new limits. Two, to discover how strong you've gotten, see the kind of progress you've made. Three, to understand your own boundaries of like what you're able and capable of doing.
Yeah.
But then also it helps to make sure that we're calibrating the effect of what we're doing here on a regular basis. So what we also did not mention in here is that a lot of our programming, like 90% of what we do is the same stuff.
Yeah.
And this is so important this is important for like new trainers, for new coaches who might ever listen to our podcast, even though we don't do this for new coaches, new trainers. But if anyone ever, like if our members were like to share our podcast, this is a great one to share with like friends and family who are in fitness, because they can, like, you can learn something here, right? So what I've learned from the past decade of being a trainer and a coach, and like owning my own business for the past 6, almost 7 years, is you don't have to do all these fancy things and like have someone throw a Bosu ball in the air and catch it on their head, but while balancing on a Bosu ball and juggling 2 kettlebells in 2 hands and flipping it and catching on the horns. And you don't have to do all this stuff.
You don't have to do it.
You don't have to be the one who tries to stand on the horns of a kettlebell and do your one single leg pistol squats because you saw it on Instagram. That's what I did, if you didn't know that. But I did that.
High risk, low reward.
I did that back in like 2013. I thought that was the cool thing to do. But it's okay to think that way. However, in terms of creating a sustainable program, this is what we're talking about now: is longevity, is sustainability, it's progressive, and this is scientifically and intelligently designed fitness programming. Yeah. And this is what we do. Yeah. And we bring it all full circle with people going through these same 90% of the time. It's the same movements, just organized in a little bit of a different way. Maybe with different reps, different sets, usually in a progressive manner. So that way, if people who are here and who stay here, if you're here for at least 3 months or more, you're usually going through this progression of, it's called periodization, but we go through it like for 1 month, like we do a 4-week rotation, then we go through another 4-week rotation, then we go through another 4-week rotation. And then we start a new periodization of a whole new program. But it's so important for people to understand that all these flashy movements and these exciting exercises and workouts and different things where you can, the pound, like banging the sticks on the floor and stuff, like that's a great conditioning workout for people who want to bang sticks. I'm not talking it down. It's great. It's a great way to get someone exercising who doesn't exercise. The point of it all is if you're able to prioritize strength training as your foundation and doing it in the structure that we're presenting here and that we do for our members, you will see progress, you will see changes, and it will lead to results. Always.
Yeah. And I know, I want to address this just because I didn't want to let it go. 90%-ish what you were just describing is like exercises we do very regularly, things that come back into our programs very frequently. But there also are a lot of new things that come up from program to program. And that's always it's very intentional. We're trying to expose the body to new conditions, new ranges of motion, new new ways to tax your body, so that again, when you go out into the real world and when you're finding yourself in these situations where maybe you've never experienced something like what you're about to experience, you have built so much resilience in so many different categories that you can pretty much check all the boxes and say, although I've never done this, I feel prepared to do this.
Good.
And you can walk away with that knowing that you're way less likely to get injured and all those other things that come with it. Of course, weighing out, like I mentioned earlier, risk versus reward. If you're going out and doing something completely stupid, maybe expect to get injured. Don't go out and do stuff that is inherently not very safe. But that was great. I love all those points you nailed there, man.
That's good, man.
And I don't know that I have a whole lot more to add to it other than the stretching that comes at the end of our training sessions.
That's how we end it.
It's important. We stretch not just to like try and sit there and do what we were taught in gym class. Phys ed class. I need to stop calling it gym class. I'm like doing a disservice to some of our friends. It's not just trying to do the things you were told to do. It works on multiple levels. We're helping our bodies get over that stress response that we just did while we were training, right? We're putting our bodies through quite a bit, a lot of taxing events while we're training, and that's stimulating our bodies. So we would call that a sympathetic response. It's something that our body is like, wow, I feel very stimulated. And then you're trying to take a step back and help I don't want to use the word stimulate our parasympathetic response because that makes it sound like I'm still stimulating. But no, we're trying to tell your body to start to slow down, rest, and digest. We're kicking in some of those other mechanisms that tell your nervous system to start to calm down, bring your breathing rate down, your heart rate down. Tissue temperature is still high though, so muscles are still very pliable. And that's why it's so important to finish your workouts or finish your training sessions with stretching instead of trying to force the stretching early on in your training session when the muscles still aren't really warm, they're still a little cold, or maybe we haven't experienced enough stimulus to like kind of, I don't want to say wear our body down, but like get us to a point where we can actually start to relax. You know, we're always hype about getting in training, but like when we're done, we need to know how to take a step back. So it works to stretch the muscle, which causes cellular changes because we hold our stretches for, usually most of them are held for about 45 seconds. And that's enough time to actually make plastic changes to the length of the muscle.
What's the bare minimum of what you need to hold a stretch for?
I wouldn't go any lower than 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Yeah.
30, yeah, you feel the same way?
I feel the same way.
Yeah. 30 seconds. And that's based on literature. So out there's really good research to support so more permanent changes on muscles with longer stretch times, but you get to a point where it doesn't really make much of a difference after that. Not to say that it's bad for you. There are probably people who would argue that some things aren't as good for you if you hold them longer. Whatever. I think to every person their own and all, but like I do agree. I think that about 30 to 45 seconds minimally, maybe up to about 60 seconds tops for some of these things, depending on what you're doing, is helpful for making those permanent changes, but it's also bringing you down so that you're ready to go start your day without walking out of the gym and ripping the door off the hand. You know, like you don't want to go out there into the world and be driving your car like a madman because you're still overstimulated from your training session. No, bring it down, rest, get ready to digest because hopefully you're planning a meal or something off after that training sessions as well to get some of those nutrients back in your body.
And that's a whole other topic we talked about. I think we talked about it in another episode. Didn't we talk about it in the other episode?
Yeah, we did.
The pre-workout, post-workout?
Yeah. Right times and right things to fuel your body with.
It's an important one, so go back and listen to that one if you haven't already listened to it.
Yeah.
But for now, I think we're just going to quickly pay some bills and wrap it up here. So
wrap it up, man.
So let's just make a quick shout out. So if you're watching us, if you're hanging out with us, make sure you head over to BentOnBetter.com, BentOnBetter.com. And then if you're looking to get started with the program, if you're looking to get started, if you're local, if you're not local, we just also offer real-time virtual training. We also do programming for people who want to have a program written by us and then work on their own terms and have an exercise library access at any time from us. You can access all of that by just filling out our form. So go to BentOnBetter.com/connect and fill out the form there. We'll reach out to you within 24 business hours. But if you have any questions, if you have anything you want to talk about, like let us know in the comment section below on YouTube or send us an email. Either one of us, it's our first name, so MATT, or Nick, NICK, at BentOnBetter.com. Either one of us would be happy to address and welcome any questions you have, any compliments you have on the show. If any topics you'd like to have us discuss in the future, we'd like to bring that out. But for now, is there anything else you want to add in there before we wrap it up?
Nope.
That's everything?
That's it, man.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us today. We will see you again next time.
See ya.